The silent music betrayal, the children of Haven's Rest played beneath. 3 suns, their laughter mixing. Music with the gentle hum of atmospheric processors that had transformed this barren world into a garden. Elena Vasquez watched the live feed from her office 12 light years away, her coffee growing cold as she smiled at the sight of human children chasing Velian younglings through gardens they'd planted together. 75,000 humans called Haven's Rest home now, living alongside 20,000 aliens from 6 different species. It was everything humanity had dreamed of when they'd first reached for the stars 50 years ago. The diplomatic outpost where Elena served as commander hummed with its usual controlled chaos. Translators worked in pods of 3, converting human proposals into the clicking, singing, and color-shifting languages of the Galactic Union's 47-member species. Trade negotiators laughed over lunch with their Corinthian counterparts. Scientists shared data on gravitational anomalies with colleagues who breathed methane and saw an ultraviolet. This was the dream made real. This was why humanity had chosen the path of peace. When they discovered they weren't alone in the universe, Elena's communication panel chimed softly. Another routine council session starting in 20 minutes. She pulled up the agenda, scanning through the usual bureaucratic concerns. Resource allocation for the Outer Rim territories, trade dispute mediation between the Felcros and Yanthan merchants, a proposal from Earth to establish 3 new agricultural colonies in unclaimed systems. Nothing unusual, nothing that suggested today would be any different from the 1,000 days before it. She finished her coffee and straightened her uniform. The silver insignia on her collar marked her as a Level 7 diplomat, the highest rank humanity had achieved in the Union's complex hierarchy. It had taken 30 years of flawless service, countless compromises, and unwavering commitment to peace for any human to reach this level. Elena wore it with pride, knowing she represented not just Earth but humanity's better nature. The council chamber existed as both physical space and holographic projection, allowing members to attend from anywhere in the galaxy. Elena's pod materialized in the outer ring where newer species were positioned. 47 other pods flickered into existence around the massive spherical room, each containing representatives from civilizations that had mastered space travel millennia before humans discovered fire. At the chamber center floated the Council of 12, the senior species who'd founded the Galactic Union 8,000 years ago. The Zerathian representative materialized directly across from Elena. Ambassador Krelex was an imposing figure. Even in holographic form, his species stood nearly 3 meters tall with crystalline exoskeletons that refracted light into intimidating patterns. The Zerathians controlled 200 star systems and fielded the 2nd largest military fleet in known space. They'd been members of the Galactic Union for 6,000 years, their voice carrying weight that humanity could only dream of matching. Kelex's faceted eyes fixed on Elena with an intensity that made her uneasy. She'd worked with him for 5 years, and he'd never looked at her quite like this before. There was something cold in his gaze, something final. The session began with standard formalities, reports from various committees, approval of trade routes, recognition of scientific achievements. Elena presented Earth's proposal for the 3 new colonies, carefully explaining how they'd be positioned in systems no other species had claimed, how they'd focus on agricultural development to help feed the growing populations of the outer rim, how humanity sought only to contribute to the Union's prosperity. The proposal passed with minimal discussion. It always did. Humans were model citizens. They asked for little, gave much, and caused no trouble. Perfect neighbors, ideal junior partners in the grand civilization of the galaxy. Then Kellax rose to speak. Alina felt something shift in the chamber's atmosphere. Other delegates seemed to lean forward slightly. Some shifted uncomfortably in their pods. The Council of 12 exchanged glances she couldn't quite interpret. The Zerathian's voice resonated through the translation systems, each species hearing it in their own way, but all catching the edge. Beneath his words, he spoke of threats to galactic stability, of species that expanded too quickly, too ambitiously, of civilization that smiled and spoke of peace while quietly growing stronger, more numerous, more influential. He never said the word human, but everyone knew exactly who he meant. Alina's hands gripped her chair's armrest. She prepared for accusations like this. Humanity had response protocols for every conceivable diplomatic crisis. She opened her mouth to request the floor to present the carefully crafted arguments about humanity's contributions to galactic society, about their exemplary record of cooperation and restraint. Before she could speak, Kellax continued. He spoke of necessary actions, of demonstrations that would remind upstart species of their proper place in the galactic order, of lessons that must be taught before problems became crisis. Alina's communication panel suddenly screamed red. Priority, alert, maximum urgency. The signal pattern made her blood freeze. Ons rest. Her fingers flew across the controls, pulling up the emergency feed. The image materialized in front of her, visible only in her pod, and what she saw stopped her heart. The 3 sons of Haven's Rest were partially obscured by ships, Zerathian warships, their distinctive crystalline holes unmistakable. 200 vessels in perfect formation, weapons arrays glowing with gathered energy. Below them, the colony's defense satellites attempted to lock targeting solutions. Their pathetic civilian-grade systems no match for military hardware. Alina watched as the first lance of energy punched through the atmosphere. It struck the central district where 70,000 humans and aliens lived in integrated neighborhoods. Impact crater expanded outward in a perfect circle, vaporizing everything. Within 2 km, the shock wave flattened buildings for another 5 km beyond that. More strikes followed, precise, methodical, devastating. The agricultural zones that fed 3 neighboring star systems burned. The schools where human and alien children learned together turned to ash. Hospitals, the homes, the dreams, all of it erased in fire and light. Alina's screen showed her the colony's emergency broadcast, fragmentary transmissions from people trying to evacuate, trying to understand, trying to survive. She heard human voices and alien voices together, screaming the same confusion, the same terror, the same desperate questions about why this was happening. Then she heard a voice she knew, her twin brother Marcus, transmitting from the residential sector. His voice somehow steady despite the chaos around him. He was herding children into a shelter humans and Velians together. His wife beside him, coordinating with other families. He was doing what Marcus always did, taking care of others, being the better person. His transmission cut off mid-sentence as another energy strike hit his sector. Elena sat frozen, unable to process what she just witnessed, unable to reconcile the feed from Haven's rest with the chamber around her where Kellax was still speaking, his tone casual, almost bored. Then she realized what he was saying. He was describing the attack in real time, not as something happening but as something he'd ordered, as something the Council of 12 had approved in a secret session 3 days ago, as something necessary to remind humanity that peace was a privilege granted by stronger species, not a right earned through cooperation. 75,000 humans, 20,000 aliens who'd chosen to live alongside them, all of them erased because humanity had dared to be successful, had dared to be popular, had dared to suggest through their very existence that strength wasn't the only path to respect. Elena's communication panel showed her the cold mathematics of genocide, casualty estimates climbing, life sign readings dropping, emergency beacons going silent one by one, and through it all, Krelax explaining to the chamber why this was justified, why this was legal under ancient provisions of the Union Charter that allowed corrective actions against species deemed potentially destabilizing. No one objected. The Council of 12 sat silent, their ancient faces impassive. Other delegates avoided looking at Elena's pod. Some species that humanity had considered friends simply looked away. The message was clear. This was acceptable. This was how the galaxy worked. This was the price of humanity's naivety and believing peace meant safety. Elena's hands shook as she tried to compose a response, tried to find words adequate to this moment. Before she could speak, every human pod in the chamber received the same message. Simultaneously, it came from Earth, from the central command she'd never heard of, using encryption keys she didn't know existed. The message was simple, too. Words that changed everything. Recall. Authorized. Elena stared at those words, her mind struggling to process their meaning. Then more instructions followed. Every human diplomat was to evacuate immediately. Every human trader, scientist, tourist, and citizen was to withdraw from all non-human territories. No explanations, no delays, no exceptions. The communication systems went haywire as humans across the galaxy received identical messages. In the council chamber, every human pod simply deactivated. Elena watched as her fellow diplomats vanished without farewell, following protocols she'd never been briefed on, responding to authorities she hadn't known existed. She looked one last time at Kelfax. The Zerathian ambassador met her gaze with what might have been satisfaction or might have been contempt. He made his point. He taught humanity its place. Elena closed her pod and initiated the withdrawal sequence. As the holographic chamber faded, she pulled up Earth's public communication channels. They were completely silent. Every broadcast, every news feed, every public statement had simply stopped. Earth had gone dark. Then across every frequency used by the Galactic Union, across every channel that connected the civilized species of the galaxy, a single message appeared. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It didn't explain anything. It simply stated a fact that would echo through history. Civilization ends here. Alina boarded the automated transport that would take her to Earth. Around her, other humans moved with the same mechanical precision. No one spoke, no one cried. They simply followed the recall protocols, their faces blank, their movements efficient as the ship accelerated away from the diplomatic station. Alina pulled up one last feed. The sensors showed something impossible. Around Earth, around every human colony, around installations that were supposed to be simple research stations or mining operations, energy signatures were spiking. Defense grids that officially didn't exist were activating. Ships that had never appeared on any registry were powering up their engines. In the space of 3 hours, humanity had revealed that everything the galaxy thought it knew about them was wrong. The farmers and scientists and diplomats were real, but they'd never been the whole truth. Beneath the peaceful surface, humanity had been building something else, something they'd hoped never to use, something the galaxy had forced them to remember they were capable of becoming. Alina closed her eyes and thought of Marcus, thought of his children playing in gardens that no longer existed, thought of 75,000 voices silenced because someone wanted to prove a point about strength and weakness. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed in her expression. The diplomat was gone. What remained was something older, something humanity had tried very hard to leave behind. When they reached for the stars, the transport jumped to faster than light travel, carrying Alina toward Earth and whatever came next. Behind them, the galaxy was about to learn a lesson of its own about what happens when you mistake patience for weakness, when you confuse peace for surrender, when you force those who have chosen to be better to remember everything they're capable of at their worst. Civilization ends here. And from the ashes of Haven's Rest, something terrible was about to be born. The reckoning dawned. The silence from Earth lasted exactly 72 hours. During that time, the Galactic Union's intelligence networks worked frantically to understand what was happening. Every sensor array pointed toward human space detected the same impossible readings, energy signatures that shouldn't exist, ships appearing on scanners that had never been registered with any authority, installations that were supposed to be civilian research stations suddenly broadcasting military-grade encryption patterns. In the intelligence center of the Galactic Union headquarters, analysts from 24 species crowded around holographic displays that showed data none of them could explain. Commander Thiela's veteran Corvidian intelligence officer with 40 years of experience stared at the numbers with growing disbelief. 3 days ago, humanity's registered military capability consisted of 73 patrol vessels designed for asteroid defense and pirate deterrence. Today, the sensors showed over 4,000 combat-capable ships emerging from locations across human-controlled space. A junior analyst, barely old enough to have finished his training, voiced what everyone was thinking. Where were they hiding them? We monitor every construction facility. We track resource allocation. We observe their industrial output. How do you hide 4,000 warships? The loss manipulated the display, highlighting patterns in the data. You don't hide them. You build them where everyone can see, and you call them something else. He pulled up historical records showing human mining operations in asteroid belts the energy requirements had always seemed excessive. For simple resource extraction, he showed civilian cargo haulers with engine signatures far more powerful than their stated function required. He showed research stations studying stellar phenomena that happened to have reactor outputs sufficient to power military-grade weapon systems. They've been preparing for this, the Lost said. Quietly, not for years, for decades. Every colony ship that launched carried components for defense platforms. Every mining operation doubled as weapons manufacturing. Every research station was a potential military base. They built an entire war machine in plain sight, and we never noticed because we assumed they were telling the truth about being peaceful across the galaxy. Other species were reaching the same horrifying conclusion. The humans hadn't changed when they reached the stars. They'd simply hidden what they were, and now, because of Haven's Rest, because of Kallax's demonstration of force, humanity was showing its true face on the bridge of the TDSV Defiant Promise. Admiral James Reeves watched his fleet assemble with emotions he'd spent 30 years learning to control. He was 63 years old, had joined Earth's hidden military program when he was 25, and had spent his entire adult life hoping this day would never come. He trained crews, designed tactics, and built a fleet capable of fighting the entire galactic union if necessary, and he prayed every single day that it would all be unnecessary, that humanity's diplomatic efforts would succeed, that peace would hold. Haven's Rest had ended those prayers. The ships gathering around his flagship represented the culmination of humanity's greatest secret. They weren't the massive dreadnoughts that species like the Zerathians favored. Human military philosophy had taken a different path. The fleet consisted of smaller vessels, faster and more maneuverable, each equipped with artificial intelligence systems that pushed the boundaries of what the Galactic Union considered ethical. Every ship could operate independently or as part of a coordinated swarm. Every crew member was a volunteer who'd lost someone in what the Union called isolated incidents over the years. Because Haven's Rest wasn't the first attack on humans, it was simply the largest, the most blatant, the one that finally forced Earth to act. Reeves pulled up the tactical display showing Zerathian military installations across their 200-star systems. His orders from Earth were clear and terrifying in their precision. Every weapons manufacturing facility, every shipyard, every military academy, every research center developing weapon systems, all of them were to be destroyed completely, permanently. But hospitals were to be avoided, schools left standing, residential zones untouched. This wasn't genocide. This was something humanity had refined over thousands of years of warfare. This was the systematic removal of an enemy's ability to wage war while leaving their civilization intact. His communication officer spoke quietly. Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from the Zerathian High Command. They're requesting negotiations, offering reparations for Haven's Rest, asking for terms. Reeves didn't look away from the tactical display. Acknowledge receipt. Continue operations, sir. They're offering full demilitarization, complete withdrawal from all contested territories, recognition of human sovereignty over any systems we claim. Continue operations. The communication officer hesitated. Admiral, they're Begging, the message includes personal pleas from civilian leadership. They're saying their people are terrified that we're becoming the monsters we claim to oppose. Reeves finally turned to look at his officer. The young woman was 28 years old. She'd lost her parents and younger brother when a mining colony. The outer rim suffered a catastrophic system failure that killed 8,000 humans. An investigation had revealed evidence of sabotage, but the Galactic Union had declared it inconclusive and closed the case. She knew exactly what humanity was capable of because she'd watched her family die while the galaxy shrugged. "Tell me something," Reeves said quietly, when Haven's Rest was burning, when 75,000 people were being murdered for the crime of being successful. Did the Zerathians stop when humans begged? Did they accept surrender? Did they show mercy to the children? The officer's jaw tightened. "No, sir." "Then we continue operations. We stop when the job is complete, not before." Across Zerathian space, human forces moved with precision that terrified every species watching. They didn't attack randomly. They didn't target population centers. They simply and methodically destroyed every installation capable of producing weapons of war. Orbital construction yards exploded and carefully controlled detonations that left nearby civilian stations untouched. Ground-based manufacturing complexes were bombed with munitions that destroyed machinery but left surrounding neighborhoods intact. Militaries received warnings to evacuate, then were reduced to foundations. The Zerathians tried to fight back. Their second largest fleet in known space, over 15,000 warships, engaged human forces near their primary shipyard complex. The battle lasted 18 minutes. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed chaotic but were actually controlled by worked AI systems that thought faster than biological minds could process. They didn't try to destroy every ZRA the vessel. They targeted command ships, disabled communications, created confusion, and then struck at propulsion systems. By the time the engagement ended, 12,000 Zerathian ships were drifting powerless in space, their crews alive but helpless. And through every battle, through every strike, human forces broadcast the same message. Audio from Haven's Rest, the sounds of children screaming, buildings collapsing, people dying. The galaxy heard what they'd ignored when it happened. They heard it now on every frequency. Impossible to block, impossible to ignore. In the Galactic Union Council chamber, emergency session followed emergency session. Species that had remained silent during Haven's Rest now demanded immediate action to stop humanity's rampage. Other species that had suffered under Zerathian aggression for centuries quietly suggested that perhaps this was justice. The Council of 12, ancient and supposedly wise, discovered that their authority meant nothing when humanity simply ignored their calls for ceasefire. Elena Vasquez stood in Earth's actual military command center, buried 3 km beneath the Atlantic Ocean. She'd been here for 5 days, watching the systematic dismantling of Zerathian military power. Her diplomatic credentials had been replaced with a military advisory role she'd never trained for. Earth had decided that those who'd witnessed Haven's Rest firsthand needed to be part of what came next, needed to remember why this was necessary. Premier Aldrin Hayes, Earth's actual leader rather than the diplomatic figure had the Union dealt with, stood Beside her, he was 70 years old, had led humanity's hidden government for 2 decades and looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. They're saying, "We've gone too far," Hayes said. Watching the tactical displays, 3 species have signed a petition demanding we cease operations immediately. They're threatening economic sanctions, military intervention, complete isolation from galactic society. Elena thought of Marcus, of his children, of 75,000 voices that would never speak again. What's our response? Hayes pulled up a message being prepared for broadcast to the entire galaxy. We're changing the rules. No more secret councils voting to exterminate populations they find inconvenient. No more demonstrations of force against civilian targets. No more allowing the strong to prey on the weak. Because it's tradition, the message went out on every channel in every language. Spoken by Admiral Reeves himself, his voice was calm, factual, and absolutely final to all species of the galactic union. Humanity did not want this war. We joined your civilization hoping to leave violence behind. We built colonies focused on farming and research. We shared our technology freely. We mediated disputes. We asked only to be allowed to grow alongside you in peace. The attack on Haven's Rest has shown us that peace is not possible under the current galactic order. Therefore, that order ends today, effective immediately. Any species that attacks civilian populations will face complete military dissolution. Your warships will be destroyed. Your weapons facilities will be eliminated. Your ability to wage offensive war will be permanently removed. Humanity will enforce this new order, not because we want power, but because we've learned that those who speak loudest about strength understand only one language. We've tried showing you our gardens, you burn them. So now you'll see what we're capable of when pushed. This is not a negotiation. This is not subject to council vote. This is the price the galaxy pays for teaching humanity that peace is weakness. We'll prove you wrong by force if necessary. For as long as necessary. The broadcast ended across the galaxy. Species reacted with outrage, fear, and in some cases quiet relief. The strong protested that humanity had no right to impose such rules. The weak wondered if perhaps the galaxy might actually become safer. 6 days after the message, Zarathian space lay defenseless. Every military installation destroyed, every warship captured or disabled, every weapon system dismantled. The civilization that had terrorized the Outer Rim for 6,000 years could barely defend against pirates, and human forces simply withdrew, leaving them alive but toothless, a warning to every other species about what happened when you mistook patience for weakness. 12 days after Haven's Rest, Elena stood at a memorial being constructed on Earth. 75,000 names carved in black stone, imported from the ruins of the colony itself. She found Marcus' name, ran her fingers over the letters that represented her twin, the better half of herself, the man who believed until the end that cooperation would win over force. Admiral Reeves joined her, his dress uniform crisp but his eyes exhausted. "We're winning," he said quietly. 23 species have already agreed to the new protocols. Another 30 are negotiating terms. The Galactic Union is being restructured whether the Council of 12 likes it or not. And what have we become? Elena asked, not looking away from her brother's name. we came to the stars to be explorers, scientists. Farmers now were the galaxies. Enforcers were the thing every species. Fears were what they made us, Reeves. Replied we wanted to be partners, they wanted us to be victims, so we became something else entirely, something worse. Then victims, we became judges, Alina. Thought about that, about the human ships now permanently stationed throughout the galaxy, about the monitoring systems tracking every military installation of every species, about the fact that humanity would spend the next century, maybe the next millennium, policing a civilization that had shown them the cost of trust. Marcus would have hated this, she said finally. He believed in people, in cooperation, in the idea that we could all be better together, I know, Reeves said, but he also believed in protecting the innocent, in standing up to bullies, in making sure children could play in gardens without being burned alive to prove a point. We're doing what he would have wanted, even if he wouldn't have liked how we're doing it. They stood together in silence, two people who'd never wanted to be soldiers, looking at names of people who'd never wanted to be martyrs. Around them, Earth continued its mobilization. More ships were being built, more crews trained, more systems deployed. Humanity had learned its lesson about the galaxy. Peace required strength, cooperation needed enforcement, gardens needed guards, and if the galaxy wouldn't protect the innocent, then humanity would do it for them, not as partners, not as equals, but as something the ancient species had forgotten could exist, as warriors who chose peace but remembered war, as judges who would rather be farmers but refused to let others burn the fields. Elena pressed her palm against her brother's name one final time. We'll make sure it matters, she whispered. We and LT, Unc and GT, LL make sure no one else burns. Because they dared to dream of something better above them. Earth's orbital defense network gleamed in the sunlight. No longer hidden, no longer secret. Permanent reminder to every species in the galaxy that civilization had indeed ended at Haven's Rest. What rose from those ashes was something new, something that honored the dead by ensuring their fate never befell another innocent. The galaxy had wanted to teach humanity its place. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson that would echo for millennia, that those who choose peace are often the most dangerous when forced to choose war, that patience is not weakness, that gardens grow best when protected by those willing to fight for them. Civilization ends here, the message had said, and in its place something better would grow, built on the ashes of Haven's Rest, enforced by those who remembered what happened when the strong preyed on the weak, guarded by humans who'd rather have been anything else but refused to let the galaxy make more martyrs out of dreamers. The memorial wall gleamed. The afternoon sun, 75,000 names, 75,000 reasons why humanity would never again mistake peace for safety, 75,000 voices demanding that their deaths mean something. And across the galaxy, species were learning that when humans make promises, they keep them, even the terrible ones, especially the terrible ones. Civilization had indeed ended at Haven's Rest. What came after would be built on harder truths and defended by those who'd learned the price of naivety. The galaxy would be safer for it, whether the galaxy wanted to be or